UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. UHD quality video streaming, internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
Lifeboy සමට හිතකර බවට විද්‍යානුකූලව පරීක්ෂා කර ඇත. විෂ බීජ මත්තුයි සමටත් සුමුතුයි.
Tonight, not our cup of tea. The foreign minister says the government is totally against any special OHCHR special mechanism probe.
There is no proper ethical foundation whatsoever. It represents the use of human rights as a tool for intervention in the domestic affairs.
Hopes and confirmations. The IMF again confirms no Sri Lankan request and reveals hope for a G20 debt standstill agreement.
We have not received a request for financial support from the government of Sri Lanka. Of course, we stand ready to discuss options if requested.
Another rung in the ladder. Sri Lanka welcomed its 17th state campus today, the University of Vaunia. Long enough. Public inconveniences continue as Health Union says they won't act without the enjoining order in hand. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Friday the 11th of February 2022.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9, live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9, I'm Dhammik Ekanaika. Now, if there was any uncertainty about whether the government has approached the International Monetary Fund for assistance, there shouldn't be anymore. At a media briefing, the IMF said that it has not received a request from the Sri Lankan government for financial support, but reiterated that it is prepared to discuss options if the request comes. It added that two key changes to its common framework are also expected to be agreed upon when the G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meet next week.
Over the past weeks, calls from the opposition to seek IMF monetary assistance to deal with the country's current economic situation has been getting louder and louder. At successive cabinet media briefings, the matter was raised with the answer to being the same at each one of them. The government has not decided to approach the IMF. However, the door is open for dialogue with all agencies and countries. Even when the finance minister said that the government in fact has approached the IMF for their expertise, that too turned out to be a technical assistance for the macro-fiscal unit of the Ministry of Finance. With even the international commentators urging the government to turn to the IMF. During the IMF media briefing yesterday, the question of Sri Lanka was inevitably brought up.
On Sri Lanka, we had a staff team from the IMF in Colombo toward the end of last year, finished up just before the end of the year, and that was related to the Article 4 consultation. Then that we expect to be discussed by the Executive Board in the normal way towards the end of this month. I can tell you that we had a mission that was aiming to strengthen technical assistance, a mission aiming to strengthen the macro fiscal unit at the Ministry of Finance as part of our capacity development activities. That was conducted virtually and is just concluding almost as we speak. We have not received a request for financial support from the government of Sri Lanka. Of course, we stand ready to discuss options if requested, and we continue to closely monitor economic and policy developments.
Gary Rice also responded to a question on what the International Monetary Fund is expecting from the next week's G20 meeting, especially on debt relief.
You may have noted the Managing Director and others speaking just in recent days about some steps that we would like to see taken to strengthen the common framework, and these include a sustained debt service standstill for the duration of the negotiation once a country would indicate its willingness to participate in the common framework. We are advocating that there should be a debt service standstill once the country indicates its willingness to participate. And we are also calling for a firm timeline, a specific timeline for the process to be completed with regards to a negotiation around a specific country on its debt restructuring. These would be two elements that we think would significantly strengthen the common framework, and hopefully we might see some progress in those discussions at the G20.
Sri Lanka's 17th state university, the University of Vavuniya, was declared open today by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Speaking at the event, the head of state emphasised the important role private universities play in the country's higher education system and called on the University Grants Commission to remove barriers, paving the way for such institutions to be set up.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today declared the Vavuniya campus, affiliated to the Jaffna University, as a state university named Vavuniya University. Accordingly, the university becomes Sri Lanka's 17th state university. The Faculty of Applied Sciences, the Faculty of Business and the English Language Unit affiliated to the University of Jaffna were established in 1997 as the Vavuniya campus. The university was brought to its current status after considering the requests that had been made by students and lecturers of the campus over a considerable period of time.
Mainly software or both hardware and software? Mainly software. So now this the fourth year?
1974 දී යාපන මණ්ඩපය පිහිටුවීමත් 1979 දී ඒ යාපනයේ විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ බවට පත් කිරීමෙනුත් පසු මේ ප්‍රදේශවල ජනතාවට සිතට දැනෙන්නට ව්‍යාපෘතියක් උසස් අධ්‍යාපනය තුල සිදු වී නැහැ. එවන් තත්වයක් හමුවේ මේ අභිනව වවුනියා විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ පිහිටුවීම ඓතිහාසික අවස්ථාවක් යයි මා සිතනවා. අභිනව වවුනියා විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයේ ප්‍රථම වසර සඳහා සිංහල දරුවන් 597ක් දෙමළ සහ මුස්ලිම් දරුවන් 290ක් ඇතුළත් කරගෙන තියෙනවා. මේ සිසුන් නේවාසිකව සිටින්නේ එකම නේවාසිකාගාර එකයි.
දන්නවා උසස් අධ්‍යාපනය ලැබලා සමත් වෙන විශාල සිසුන් සංඛ්‍යාවකට විශ්වවිද්‍යාල අධ්‍යාපනය ලබන්නට බැරි වෙනවා. ඉතින් මෙන්න මේ හින්දා තමයි මම කීප විටක්ම කියපු දෙයක් අපි රාජ්‍ය නොවන එහෙත් අධ්‍යාපනය වෙනුවෙන්ම කැපවුණු ආයතන හරහා අපිට මේ උසස් අධ්‍යාපනය ලබා දීමට හැකිව යාව ලබා ගැනීම. එවැනි විශ්වවිද්‍යාල අද කීපයක්ම තිබෙනවා. නමුත් මේවට තිබෙන නීතිමය බාධක ඉවත් කරලා තවත් එවැනි අවස්ථාවන් ලබා දීමට ක්‍රියා කිරීම ඉතාමත්ම වැදගත් වෙනවා. මම සභාපතිතුමාගෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටින පුළුවන් තරම් ඉක්මනින් මෙන්න මේ වෙනස්කම් ඉටු කරලා ඒ අවස්ථාවන් ලබා දීමත් අපේ යුතුයකමක්.
With 16 more days until the United Nations Human Rights Council convenes for this year, Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pires affirms that Sri Lanka is not willing to support the special mechanism established by the OHCHR to gather evidence against the country. He added that this doesn't mean that Sri Lanka rejects the UNHRC. Rather, only the special mechanism are being used by the Council to overstep its jurisdiction and intervene in the country's domestic affairs.
If you take a look at the contemporary world, what are the trouble spots in this world? Is Sri Lanka a problem to anybody? If the answer is no, how does one begin to justify the energy, the time, the money that is being spent on a relentless pursuit of Sri Lanka? When there's so much more to be done, it's a question of priority. Resources are finite. Half the population of the world, no less, is struggling to obtain access to life-saving vaccines. In that situation, does it make any sense? Is it at all morally or ethically justifiable to use scarce resources to pursue Sri Lanka? Oral updates, written reports, special mechanisms that are established under the office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Geneva, all to pursue Sri Lanka. Is that what we expect of the United Nations system? For example, in the last report of the High Commissioner, she said, I have in my possession 120,000 items of evidence, which I'm going to use against Sri Lanka. We don't know what this evidence is. One of the basic rules of justice is that if an allegation is made against you, the nature of that allegation must be explained to you. You must be told who is making that allegation so that you have the opportunity to process them in, if you want, to ascertain whether this is true, whether this is fabricated, whether this is exaggerated, is this based on malice? In order to find out all this, surely you must know the nature of the allegation against you and its probative value, its reliability and its dependability. But if these allegations are made by people lurking in the shadow under cover of anonymity, how then is it possible for you to defend yourself? So that is a cynical violation of basic norms relating to justice and fairness. In Sri Lanka's case, these fundamental principles are ignored and violated with impunity. So we reject that. We do not reject the United Nations system or the office of the High Commissioner. However, we strongly object to the creation of a special mechanism exclusively for Sri Lanka. Because what has been established under the office of the High Commissioner is a mechanism for gathering evidence against Sri Lanka for use in international tribunals and in courts purporting to exercise what is known as universal jurisdiction. So we are rejecting that special mechanism. We say that there is no proper ethical foundation whatsoever. It represents the use of human rights as a tool for intervention in the domestic affairs of people. Devolution of power, the reorganization of the armed forces. So some of those recommendations have a direct bearing on you and your carriers. The balance of authority between the central government and the provincial council. The Prevention of Terrorism Act and its reform, we are doing that voluntarily. But those are matters to be decided by the parliament and the people of Sri Lanka. So what we are saying is that this special mechanism is overstepping of jurisdiction. So we will work with the UN system, we will share information with them, we will welcome visits by them, but there cannot be domination. They cannot be in the driving seat. They cannot decide Sri Lanka's priority. They cannot be a substitute for Sri Lanka's parliament and other representative institutions which reflect the will of the sovereign people of Sri Lanka. There must also be a uniform standard which the UN system applies across the board.
Tributes to late former parliamentarian Mangala Samaravira dominated parliamentary proceedings today, with prominent members of both the government and the opposition offering their recollections of the Mathura district political icon.
Today's parliament sittings commenced with votes of condolence for late parliamentarian Mangala Samaravira, led by Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa and opposition leader Sachit Premadasa. Delivering his address afterwards, Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Pires paid tribute to what he termed the late Mangala Samaravira's firm sense of conviction behind his decisions that may not have been popular with his opponents. The co-sponsoring of United Nations Human Rights Council Resolution 30/1 was, the Foreign Minister said, a key example of this.
Indeed, he did something which I don't think any foreign minister in any country did at any other time. That is, when a resolution was brought in respect of Sri Lanka, a resolution that was very sharply critical of the country's armed forces, the Honourable Mangala Samaravira decided not only to support that resolution, but to co-sponsor that resolution. And I know that officials in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs very strongly advised the minister against embarking on that course of action. But he believed that it was the right thing to do. We don't think that it is the right thing to do, but he did. He did not for a moment believe that that would advance his political career. He regarded it as utterly immaterial, and he did it. Now his view was that issues of reconciliation must be handed over to international body. That was the way to achieve credibility. Now that is an ideology which we believe to be not correct, because we believe fundamentally that reconciliation must be addressed in keeping with the culture, the historical antecedents and the social traditions of each country. There is no size that fits everybody. It is impractical to evolve a solution in Geneva and to impose it on the rest of the world. And that is the point of view which I will express at the 49th session of the Human Rights Council, which commences on the 28th of February. But that is not a reason to have less respect for the personality and the convictions of Mangala Samaravira. He did what he thought was right. We may not agree with it and we will not do it, but throughout his life, he did not consider expediency to be important.
What he came there was to try and get a resolution in favor of Sri Lanka, keeping it in line with the joint statement of the UN Secretary General and our President at that time. I must first tell one thing, that the whole government agreed to it. Everyone who sat in that cabinet agreed to it. No one can say no, because in New York, he is the one who negotiated, and Mr. Mangala Samaravira and the President Both spoke to me and I was in Colombo. And when they approved it, I discussed it further with some of the ambassadors here and we came to cabinet. So no one can wash their hands. We are all responsible. That much I must say. But there's one thing I told him and he agreed. There's going to be no war trials. We have not signed the Rome Convention. We are not going to sign the Rome Convention. So within that we should do.
I must here quote from the tribute by one of our celebrated diplomats, Prasad Karyavasam. This approach was aimed at bringing all action on alleged rights violations in Sri Lanka away and out of Geneva and New York to be handled exclusively on Sri Lankan soil. It was expected that this locally designed inclusive approach would not only revive international recognition for Sri Lanka's judiciary but would create internationally recognized truth-seeking platforms and evidence to vindicate all those wrongly accused and provide appropriate redress to those wronged during conflict in Sri Lanka. This approach would have also restored the reputation of Sri Lankan security forces.
Meanwhile, Ahilai Lankai Tamil Congress parliamentarian Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam during his tribute stated that it is the late parliamentarian's firm belief in charting a new political direction that can save Sri Lanka from heading down the precipice that it finds itself moving towards right now.
It is the Mangala Samaravira after he left mainstream political parties, a man who was free enough to voice his own genuine opinion of the direction in which this country must take, that I could find myself subscribing to. It is the only quality, in my view, Honourable Speaker, that can save this country. That says that we have had enough of the past. We must have a clean break and that we must think anew because we have hit rock bottom in following the past.
We will see shortly. Bear with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, health trade unions continued their island-wide strike today for the 5th day, despite an enjoining order being issued by the Colombo District Court. However, the Government Nursing Officers Association says that it hasn't received the order yet, and a decision on whether it will continue the strike will be taken once it is.
With the health sector strike entering a 5th day today, despite the Colombo District Court having issued an enjoining order against the Government Nursing Officers Association, members of the public are currently awaiting a response from the union. However, with hospital operations now at a complete standstill, Government Nursing Officers Association President Saman Ratnapriya revealed that no official enjoining order has been served to the union as yet, and that a decision will be taken once it is received.
වර්ජනයට අදාළ වාරණ නියෝගයක් නිකුත් කරපු බව ජනමාධ්‍ය හරහා වාර්තා වුණා. එවැනි වාරණ නියෝගයක් මටවත් අපේ සංගමයටවත් තාම නිශ්චිතව ලැබිලා නැහැ. ඒ වගේම වැඩවර්ධන කියලා කියන්නේ ව්‍යවස්ථාපිතික අයිතියක්. අපි උසාවියට කැඳෙව්වා නම් අපි මේ සම්බන්ධව කරුණු කියනවා. මේකට අදාළ තීන්දුවක් දීලා තියෙනවා නම් ඒ තීන්දුව ලැබුණු මොහොතේ අපි අපේ විධායක සභාව රැස් කරලා ඊට අදාළ තීන්දුවක් ගන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
With that, Health Minister K.D. Rambukwala says that he has hoped that the unions will heed the court order and call off their strike.
මේ දේශපාලන වමනාවන් හා දේශපාලන පසුබිම් මුල් කරගෙන කරුණු කාරණා වලට එහා ගිය ස්වරූපයක් අපි දැක්කා. ශෛල කර්ම වැනි දේවල් වලදී ජීවිත අවදානමකට ලක් වෙන තැනකට පත් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා තවදුරටත් සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශය හැටියට අපට නිහඬව සිටිය නොහැකි කියන ප්‍රතිපත්තිය අපි අනුගමනය කරලා රජයේ හෙද නිලධාරීන්ගේ සංගමයට විරුද්ධව නීතිමය වශයෙන් අධිකරණයෙන් වාරණ නියෝගයක් ඉදිරිපත් කළා තියෙනවා. අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා අධිකරණයට ගරු කරමින් මේ දින කිහිපය තුළ මේ රටේ අහිංසක රෝගීන්ට තිබ්බ පීඩනය නතර වෙයි කියන විශ්වාසය අපට තිබෙනවා.
Meanwhile, as has been seen in the past 4 days, patients continue to arrive at hospitals seeking treatment. However, with the strike having brought a halt to medicine supplies to outpatient clinics and laboratories, radiology units, patient care in wards and public health inspector duties having been disrupted, members of the public were once again left high and dry.
Principal advisor to the President, Lalit Veeratunga, believes that military medical practitioners could well be the answer to the lack of medical personnel in rural areas, which continues to be a grievance of the people. His views came during the inauguration of the 5th General Conference of the Sri Lanka College of Military Medicine.
The inauguration of the 5th General Conference of the Sri Lanka College of Military Medicine was worked off yesterday. Addressing the event, Principal Advisor to the President, Lalit Veeratunga, raised the prospect of the Military Medical Corps extending its experience gained in the battlefield to civilian situations as demonstrated by the stellar role the military played in the fight against COVID-19. He also highlighted the need for regular knowledge sharing between civilian and military medical practitioners, with the prospect of military medical personnel also serving in civilian medical facilities to become familiar with latest medical technology.
Militaries are raising their profile today as global public health actors. We see how the global military health engagement is expanding with the emergence of modern military missions such as peacekeeping operations, international humanitarian relief, disaster response, infectious disease threats, weaponization of new pathogens and such. National militaries are increasingly tapped internationally for disaster response work and humanitarian and peace operations. We are also seeing how health security is becoming a strategic enabler to foster relationships and cooperation between countries. It is important that military intervention in civilian health aspects make the communities feel safe and accepting, as we have seen in our own country. For this purpose, military medicine curricula have to be properly designed to address skills, behaviors, and competencies needed to ensure effective future leaders in the military healthcare system. The COVID-19 experience by national militaries in various countries should be seen as an added value to the military capability to function in the global civil military health system. It is also an opportunity to analyze how national military health services can step up to facilitate overworked and under-resourced local public health sectors in times of crisis. I wish to leave a thought behind for you to ponder, and that is how could the College of Military Medicine lend their expertise to serve the underprivileged and medically underserved rural and remote areas. Shouldn't we be looking at synergies between the national health system and the military medical system? This suggestion is made on the basis of the experience His Excellency the President had when he interacted with a large number of villagers and rural folk. These people complained of the lack of medical personnel in remote areas, although successive governments had built from primary to more advanced healthcare facilities.
A wanted murder suspect, who is also alleged to be an accomplice of a mega drug racketeer, was shot dead during a shootout with the police special task force last night in Moratuwa. Several other suspects present at the scene too were arrested and were remanded until the 23rd.
The police special task force raided a house in the area of Modere in Moratuwa last night as part of a crackdown on organised crime and drugs. At the time of the raid, an individual named Dilan Samira alias Abba and several others had been at the house. The police said that one of them opened fire at the STF and they made their approach, with the STF returning fire. They added that Dilan Samira was hit by return fire and he succumbed after being admitted to the Panadura base hospital. The police went on to say that the two shots fired by a suspect hit the body arm of one of the STF personnel, and he too is receiving treatment at the same hospital. Further, Dilan Samira is an accomplice of a known major drug racketeer in Dubai and was also wanted for severing a hand off of a woman several months ago. The police said the case pertaining to the incident as well as another case related to the murder are being heard before the court against Dilan Samira. The STF have taken the automatic weapon used to fire them into custody and have launched investigations into weapons stashed away by the suspects. Apart from Dilan Samira, 6 other suspects had been at the house and they were arrested. When searching the house of one of the suspects, the police had found a foreign-made hand grenade. The suspects were produced before the Moratuwa Magistrates Court and were remanded until the 23rd of this month.
Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, Sri Lanka's largest renewable energy developer, Windforce plc, has posted impressive third quarter results for the first 9 months ending on the 31st of December last year, with a consolidated revenue of 3.6 billion rupees and a 4% increase in profit after tax to 2.05 billion rupees year on year. With that, the company, which debuted on the Colombo Stock Exchange in April last year, has declared a dividend payout of 1.76 billion rupees. And the company has also revealed plans to commission a 10 megawatt solar plant in the Vaunathu in May and its 15 megawatt Hiruras wind power plant in Mana by the end of the year. The company has posted 22% growth in its solar operations in the past 9 months, mainly due to the contributions from its newly commissioned solar plant in Uganda and a rooftop solar plant that was acquired in September 2021. Sri Lankan shares rose more than 2% today and logged their best day in over a month, helped by gains in industrial and financial stocks. The CSE All Share Price Index ended 2.07% higher at 12,459.80, its biggest intraday percentage gain since the 5th of January, while the S&P SL20 posted a 3% gain to end at 4,238.90.
Played a continuous recovery for the second day while recording nearly 1 month high gain of 252 points, and S&P SL20 also recovered by 124 points. ASPI managed to recover most of the first 3 days of the week losses in today's session, mainly led by diversified financial sector counters and transportation sector counters. Today, the index continued to trade in the green zone while displaying a gradual uptrend. As investors continue to infuse buying spree in the market, index managed to close at 12,640, gaining 252 points. Even though it was a complete bull run, the recorded turnover was lowest in the week.
And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.